What do you do? You're told that you're, an abomination before God.
We're rolling.
Here we are. Welcome back to Backsliders, the podcast. We're here today with another virtual guest, Olivia Wolcott. Welcome to Backsliders.
Thank you for having me. I mean, this is great being on your show.
Yeah.
We're so excited to have you. Thank you for reaching out and sending me a lovely email. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's nice to connect with people that can relate to certain elements of our lives and make us feel less alone. So we appreciate you.
Yeah. I mean, like for me, it's like listening to your story was like, helping me feel not so alone.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
We can't say enough like how good that feels because we've felt that when other people have shared their stories, and it's just so cool and healing to hear that the cycle continues, and the more and more people speak out, the less people feel alone.
Yeah, definitely. I actually found your podcast after I officially kind of came out because I was really struggling with, I was really struggling with my past because I'm thinking my oh gosh.
You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Take your time. Don't worry.
Well, it's like, when you're outside looking in, you start to question how has this affected me, Yeah.
Yeah. And
The way you were raised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how it affected my growing up and just being transgender and everything.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Pennsylvania?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. And I really don't know that much about that state at all. Would you say it's pretty conservative?
It depends on where you are, honestly. But where I live, yes, it is definitely Trump country.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a lot of churches too, kind of like its own Bible area.
Yeah, in town here where I live, it's there's 4 churches on each corner in the center of town.
Wow.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
and then there's churches all over this entire town and then across the state and across the county.
Yeah.
And what kind of church did you grow up in?
Fundamental Independent Baptist.
Okay.
Wow. That sounds intense. Fundamental.
Independent. Yeah, they almost seem counterintuitive.
Well, they were fundamentalist in doctrine, but
Sure.
they weren't affiliated with any conference. So
Right.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know about conference, meaning there's different Baptist conferences.
yeah, definitely. There's different conferences for there's Southern. The one that comes to mind is Southern Baptist Conference.
Okay.
Right. I went to a Southern Baptist church in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're I don't know, they set the rules for their for their churches, basically.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an old church council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Baptists are pretty are they you can't even dance? Is that strict Baptist?
I think that depends. I think that might have changed.
That was that was the one I grew up in.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
you grew up in a very strict environment.
Yeah.
Was music allowed?
Music, yeah, but depended on the music, really.
Sure. There was music that was not favored. Secular.
Yeah.
Don't listen to secular music.
It's secular, but no, don't listen to rock and roll or anything like that.
Oh yeah, anything that'll make you want to move your body.
Yeah. Do you listen to rock and roll now?
Yeah.
Oh hell
And
yeah.
honestly, I did then too, kind of. But I'm it was kind of secret.
Yeah.
So,
You had to hide it.
I had to hide a lot of things.
For sure.
Yeah.
Isn't that the worst feeling?
Yeah, it is. It is totally the worst feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling like you can't be yourself,
Mm.
like you're not safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. That was my whole experience growing up because like, like I said, in transgender, and like I struggled with that for so long, because I mean, what do you do when you're told that you're, an abomination before God,
Yeah, that's
were you having
terrible.
conversations with people and they would say that, or you just kind of knew the writing on the wall? This is what I would hear.
Yeah, the writing on the wall. This is what it was like. It's not something you talk about because you're pretty sure of how people will respond.
Mm.
So,
And how young were you when you realized that you were trans? When did you learn the vocabulary while being in an environment that was so fearful of people being different?
When I learned about when I figured out when I was transgender was about 8.
Wow.
But I only recently learned about like transgender, like the term,
Yeah.
within the past couple years.
But at 8, you were like, I'm a woman. I'm a girl.
Yeah, I remember specifically thinking I want to be a girl.
Yeah.
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 And
then you just weren't really exposed to anybody that identified as that in your town or in the news, maybe even, or in mainstream media even until recently.
Even if it was, then, it was in a negative light, and, you knew, you were told that this was, a sin, and you weren't supposed to be like that. So it was like trying to suppress that for so long. And there was like the cycle, like I'd want to, and like there'd be like, someone's shoes or a skirt or something, and I'm like, I tried them on, and then I'm like, I feel ashamed for it, and then like I'm beat myself up for it, and it was just a cycle because it was never ending.
yeah,
because this is who I am, but I was also trying to like push it down.
Yeah, because you were told that there's only like one acceptable way to be. And so, of course, that would make you feel ashamed for differing at all from that path. And there's different, obviously your experience is very extreme because you felt so alone and like you couldn't talk to anyone. But I think a lot of people can relate to that on varying levels, just like this sense of shame for being a person that's sexual or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So did you have friends that you confided in, or was it something that you really kept to yourself until very recently?
I kept it to myself until like, I'd say a year and a half ago, I went to counseling.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And was it a counselor that wasn't religious?
Yeah, I wasn't going to go to a Bible counselor.
Oh, good,
that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That would have been more of the same.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, my mom knew.
She did.
Sort of, but she considered it a phase because, but
Still?
So like, yeah. Well, no, because she actually passed like at the beginning of the year, but yeah, no, she considered it a phase when I was younger.
Yeah.
And, I didn't want to tell her otherwise.
Right.
And she was probably, I definitely don't want to speak for her, but maybe that was her way of, it was probably influenced by her religious environment, just hoping that eventually you would become what they say is the acceptable way.
The way you were raised.
Yeah. And I mean, I know she loved me.
Totally.
But, at the same time, it's like she had her beliefs. So,
Yeah. And it's crazy how powerful those beliefs can be, that it can get in between even a parent unconditionally, being able to accept all parts of their child because of this doctrine that's so deeply embedded in them.
Yeah. Like when I came out to her, like saying, yeah, I'm transgender, she's like, okay. And then we were talking later and she said that, like, I really wanted her support, but she was saying, like, why, I love you. Isn't that enough? And it's like, I don't know. I kind of want to be supported here, but yeah.
You wanted to be accepted for who you you are.
Yeah.
Or you wanted to be unconditionally accepted.
Yeah. Unconditionally accepted.
Yeah. I think we all want that.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the time the only thing that gets in the way is these
fear,
ideas of separateness, and these fears of the unknown, or things that people don't understand personally, which is so sad. But that's why it's so great that you're sharing your story.
Yeah. So through your therapy, is that where you feel like you developed the courage to be yourself outside of no
that was the start, going, like, saying, okay, I'm gonna do something about this. That was the start of it. The other part of it was just like, there was a lot of different things. Like, I kind, like, a couple years ago, I started noticing, like, people were really afraid of, like, the world and stuff. And I'm like, but the Bible says that we're not supposed to be afraid, and just like that culture of fear. I'm like, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And that kind of put a degree of separation. And then, like, Ecclesiastes says, get wisdom, get understanding. And so I started, like, trying to understand myself better. And that ended up putting another degree of separation. And really, it came to a point, though, where I'm like, I can't feel the shame any longer. I can't feel the anger. I can't feel the frustration any longer. If I do, I'm going to end up doing something really bad to myself. So I'm like, that's enough. I'm going to, come what may, I'm going to, like, move forward with this and try to at least, understand it better. I may not, and like, I may end up right back where I am at that point, but, like, at least I understand it better,
Yeah. Wow. I'm so inspired by you, because it takes so much bravery and courage to do the work of moving past those stages of shame and anger, and realizing that they weren't yours to begin with. Like, those things were placed on you by people.
They were definitely
by people who are very fearful, but that's not yours to carry.
Fearful, and, like, they just have this idea of how things should be.
Should, quote unquote, should.
And it's very, like, very limited.
Very, very limited. And I find it interesting because, like, the big thing I get is God created male and female. But but at the same time, we accept that angels have no gender. So,
wow.
I mean,
like, what are we talking about?
There's, like, this double standard there,
Or a lack of understanding or desire to understand.
And
like,
there's total, like, they're stuck in their own, like,
Binary.
Yeah, definitely binary. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that extends beyond gender. It's also like, are you good or are you bad? Are you going to heaven or are you going to hell?
Exactly.
When life is so much more complex than two choices.
Yeah.
Exactly. It exists on a spectrum. Totally.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. You bringing up angels made me think of something that we learned recently over the years. And I may butcher the exact terminology or the story, but we learned, and maybe it's a specific tribe, but in indigenous culture, a lot of the times if you are
Or a specific tribe that we are not knowing to name.
We won't have to Google this, but they think that if you identify as more than one gender or your gender isn't binary, that you are closer to God.
Yeah.
That you're like, you are
Two-spirit.
Yeah, two-spirit.
Yeah.
Two-spirit, yeah.
Okay, there we go. We found it. I found it. Thank you, guys. Which I always thought was so cool because it's like they respect that this person is so tapped into their divinity that they won't be defined by two choices.
Yeah, and they have a bigger, better understanding because they have experience from both genders.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Or they're not like confined as they understand Great Spirit to be is not confined by gender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are these people that aren't confined by gender.
I've also always thought it was weird that God I guess Jesus, he was male, but it's just weird to me that we gave God a gender at all.
Yeah. I almost hate to give him a person.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know. It's like hard to escape in our language though, you know?
Yeah.
It is.
Because I feel he's more like the idea of God is more like that of a source from where we came from, like
sure,
our consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely where we are now. So is that like a new belief? What did you believe when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Jesus died for our sins, and like it was pretty much as Christian as you can get, you know?
Yeah.
As like fundamental Christian as you can get.
Mm-hmm. And did you feel like God was always watching you and judging you?
I felt like I let him down a lot. Like when I was younger.
Because that's what you were taught.
Yeah, like I had to be a certain way and I wasn't meeting that standard.
It's so damaging. It's so damaging.
Was that, just feeling like you were not a obedient kid, or was that specifically largely based on how you felt inside as your identity and you couldn't, you know what I mean? Like make sense of that with your relationship with the higher power that you...
Yeah, no, I felt like, I was a horrible sinner and that like, I just was going to be that because there was no way I could, fit that mold that they wanted for me, that God wanted for me. Mm-hmm. And I guess, at the time though, I really didn't have a total understanding of myself being transgender. I just thought, I was sinful,
And you're like, why do I feel this way or want to do these things and I can't stop?
Yeah. Why can't I stop?
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that in a way, just in terms of like being sexual, because there's such a you talked in your email a little, you mentioned purity culture. So that had an effect on me.
I was in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would actually read Josh Harris's book.
Sure.
Oh boy.
Didn't we all?
Yeah. He actually apologized for that recently.
Yeah, that was a wild journey to see happen.
We watched the documentary where he traveled the country getting people's responses. And, you know, I thought it was admirable that he was open to hearing people out about how the book hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like that side of things was like, you know, the biggest thing I can think of is like, don't have bad thoughts because, you know, there's a verse in the Bible that says, you know, if you think about something, then it's just as good as committing it. And that made it even harder for me, like just like not just like sexually, but also like be like with my struggle with being transgender.
Yeah, because if you feel like someone's monitoring your thoughts and every time you have a thought, you're disappointing.
Just racking up sin after sin.
Gosh. Yeah, it's like living in a prison.
It was.
You're like, how am I going to get out? I cannot stop these thoughts.
Like I can't apologize fast enough.
Yeah, and like, you know, even and like I couldn't escape that, and it just got worse and worse, and just like feeling worse.
How did you find, or were you able to find a sense of peace during that time? Or I guess, how did you persevere?
I wasn't able to find any peace, and I think I just got through it just out of sheer stubbornness, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like an inner strength.
Like I just, you know, this is a life that you got to keep living. It's either keep living or you end it, you know? That's one binary that kind of held for me. It's like, I got to keep going, you know, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a resilient spirit, because I can't imagine, you know, that kind of loneliness. And it's so frustrating that it's coming from a place that's supposed to be a sense of love and acceptance and community.
Unconditional love at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Unconditional love, but read the fine print.
I've always been super confused with that sentiment that I feel like is pretty prevalent in churches, which is like, love the sinner, hate the sin. You know what I mean? It's like
that one hurt me so much, you know?
Yeah.
Because for me, the sin and the sinner are the same thing. Yeah. And I've even had this conversation with people now, and they still say, no, that's not right. You know, I'm like, what are you telling me? I know how I feel.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You're like, I don't think you understand really how you feel.
Well, you can't.
Oh gosh.
You can't separate
Flashbacks.
sin from. I mean, you can't say you love someone but you hate their identity. You can't say you love someone but you hate who they are. Like that. That does not make sense.
Well, unconditional love, but you got to be straight. You got to be monogamous. You got to be, and you can't be any other like orientation or identity.
And you can't have sex before marriage. And depending on
God forbid,
unless it was them, then they can. Then they're forgiven.
Yeah.
So, did you you went to a Christian university, correct?
Bob Jones University.
Yeah,
worst idea ever.
Yeah, was this a personal decision or was this like highly encouraged? And
it was both, you know. the church I was in at the time, the pastor had gone there, and they had a film school.
Wow.
And I wanted to study film and video production.
Yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
For people who don't know Bob Jones, like, what is it like?
Bob Jones, it started out Methodist.
Okay.
It's a liberal arts Christian college.
Well, that don't make sense. Liberal.
Well, liberal arts as in like, you know, actually I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, Bob Jones, they were very much about rule of law, you know, not spirit of the law, but this is how things are.
Mm. How many students were there?
Oh gosh, over like a couple thousand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say at least upwards of maybe 20,000. I'm not sure.
So a large campus of students.
Yeah, I mean it covers in like a couple blocks.
Yeah.
In the middle of Greenville,
Okay.
South Carolina.
Mm.
Wow.
And they were pretty fundamentalist. Are they Baptist
Super
now?
fundamentalist. No, they're Christian. I don't know if they call themselves Methodist anymore, but they are still Christian.
Right.
And so did you live on campus?
Yeah.
And was it like mandatory chapel every day? Like what were
mandatory chapel? Well, I was there, and I'm kind of mad at this because, you know, it changed after I left, but you had to wear a shirt and tie like every morning. Like you got up at 7, you were required to get up at 7. You had chapel at 8, and then you had your classes for the rest of the day, and you only had to wear your tie for chapel. You didn't have to wear it afterward.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
and I hate ties.
Yeah, that's pretty like
Yeah, they're a nuisance.
weird militant.
Yeah, it is very militant.
It was very regimented, yes.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting to me, like for a group of people that really appreciate their freedom, they will also succumb and really will fall in line in a chain of command, you know, which is, I don't know if it's counter freedom, but it's definitely counter independence.
Yeah, well, I mean, you gotta follow whoever says what God's telling you, you know.
Yeah.
Whoever's got God's ear.
Yeah, whoever claims that they're closest to God. So fascinating.
Ex cathedra.
So how long did you were you there for 2 years? Were you there for 4?
2 years. I was going for a 4-year program, but I failed my sophomore project, and then I got kicked out too because I broke a rule.
What was this rule? What was this big, filthy rule?
No R-rated watching R-rated movies in the dorm.
Okay, all right.
You could only watch G-rated movies.
Oh, so PG was like not allowed.
No.
Either.
PG was too far.
I watched Gladiator.
So you like leapfrogged PG, went straight to R.
This was summer break. Nobody was there.
How did they
Who
find?
ratted you out?
The guy who was the RA who was there like for the summer.
Did he hear it, or did you just like
He
told
just
him?
walked in, you know, while I was watching.
Oh, man,
wow.
that's so crazy. And you're like, how old are you? 18, 19?
I was 18 to like what, 2 years? It was like 2009 to 2011. So, well, no, 2008 to 2011. So about 21, something like that.
Wow, that's just so.
It's so wild that the rules were like further than legal rules.
Yeah.
Yeah. And girls had to wear skirts all the time,
Yeah.
like on campus, and like you couldn't have like tank tops or anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can't see that female body. It's dangerous.
Oh, you couldn't hold hands on campus either.
Oh, so was there dating allowed, or it was just like you could date?
Dating was allowed, but you had to have someone with you.
Right.
But you had to marry them the next day.
No, not that bad. Not that bad.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Was the term courtship passed around a lot? Was that a big thing there, or was it still dating?
It was dating.
Okay. So Joshua Harris had already come and gone by the time.
Yeah, I guess so. I wasn't. That was for me. That was when I was a teenager. So it probably passed by then.
Yeah. Did you date anyone when you were at college? No.
I was about to ask someone out when I got kicked out.
Oh wow!
You know?
Gladiator ruined that.
And there's zero tolerance. One movie and you're out.
Well, that and I had some student debt, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, what am I going to do? You know?
Yeah. So what did you do after you got kicked out?
Went home and moped for about 5 years.
Yeah. Trying to figure out your next move. And at the same time, you haven't come out yet.
No.
And so I'm sure there's just a lot of like, what am I going to do? What is my life? And am I going to continue to try to like play by somebody else's rule book?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I was still fighting. I was fighting so much then, like, because it just seemed to get worse with that because I was already depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
when you did go to therapy, did you find that really helpful in kind of talking through some stuff?
It started to help.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still in the mindset of like, I want to be fixed, you know? So.
Yeah, that was so deeply ingrained in you that there was something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And was your therapist kind of like trying to help you reshape that ideology you were carrying around?
Yeah.
Or poke holes in it a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. But really the like I said, I kind of came to it on my own. Like I can't do this anymore. You know, I have to go in a direction. I decided, I just going to surrender to this because fighting against it hasn't been working.
Yeah.
So.
And at that point you had begun to learn of other people who had done the same thing and been through similar circumstances, right?
I started actually seeking that out and like looking into it. Yeah. And that's kind of when I learned about transgender, you know?
Yeah. Was this online?
Yeah.
Yeah, online.
Were you talking to people like on forums or groups,
Facebook and different groups? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big breakthrough, though, honestly, I came at an open mic at a friend's studio.
Oh, wow.
I had been writing poems about like my struggle, and one night I decided to go out and like bring some of those poems along, and a couple of them weren't even related, but then I brought some about like related to my struggles, and I decided on the fly, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump,
Yeah.
And I opened up about it, with my poems in public.
Wow.
And that was really the first time I came out to a group of people.
Wow.
Really.
That's so brave. Was your heart beating really fast?
I was shaking afterwards. Like I was literally close to like passing out.
Yeah.
All that adrenaline. I mean, a whole lifetime of, holding that in, and then to express that in front of, how many people were there?
Oh gosh, I didn't count them.
Yeah.
It was probably at least 20.
Oh yeah, so a good number of people.
What was the reaction like?
I half expected to be stoned and rode out on tarred and feathered and rode out on a pole, but it was just completely the opposite. Everybody was so supportive.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. People can't, they can, but luckily you had a great group of people there that couldn't deny you sharing your truth in such an authentic way. And they could see it probably in your presence that this was a big moment for you, and validating you and being there for you was just as important for them to do as you speaking it out loud. It becomes more than us. Like, I imagine it could have felt like you were less alone even in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. It was so overwhelming to actually have support for the first time. And I wasn't even presenting female at the time.
Right.
That came later. It's only recent, actually. But yeah.
To me, that's God. Like, that's holiness.
Right.
People loving each other. That's like what church should be.
Mm-hmm. I actually said recently that I have found more Christian love outside of church than I have inside.
Yeah. I feel that. And I feel like we hear that more and more. And I think that what's behind that is just like people are more able to be free enough to accept themselves and accept others when they're not constantly like going through a list of how to determine whether or not something is okay.
Yeah.
We've found like the most loving, accepting people outside of church.
Yeah. And about that time, I actually kind of like slacked off from going to church because, it's like I kept finding the Bible to be wanting. Like, I was searching so hard for answers and I wasn't finding them.
So you were.
It only had like, don't do this. I mean, you can tell someone not to, but it helps so much if you can tell them how not to.
Yeah. Which, how can you tell people how to not be human?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, why would I want to believe in a God that created humans, but then really has a problem with their humanity? And if they can't control that in a way that's acceptable to his unconditional love, then he's going to send them to hell. It's just a weird situation.
See, for me, it's like, I've thought about this a lot. God's supposed to be all-knowing and all-powerful. So, and he's supposed to be the creator of all things. So if he knows everything, and he knows like the path is to take in life and was to like, and how I was going to be, and yet he still created me, then isn't that him creating me transgender,
Yeah. Yeah.
God doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah. Unless, you're transgender or you're gay or something,
According to some people who...
Apparently.
Yeah.
It's so strange. I heard...
Yeah.
Have you heard of the podcast Born Again Again?
No.
It's really good. You might like it too. They're another couple who have deconstructed from Christianity. I think they identify as atheists now, but we really like their podcast. But they said something that really resonated with me. They kind of went through the Bible and they're like, let's compare God's love with the 1 Corinthians definition of love. Like, love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy, all of that stuff. And in the Bible, God himself doesn't line up with that definition. He is jealous. He is like keeping an account of people's wrongs. And so to me, that really clarified this feeling that I've had about it not lining up. I'm like, why is this unconditional? Why is this being sold as unconditional love, but has the most conditions of any love? It's like worse than a good parent's love. A parent should love and accept you unconditionally and probably wouldn't send you to be set on fire.
Yeah.
No matter what you did.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. I don't understand it either. Like, God should be like, I almost feel like there's two different gods in the Bible, like the Old Testament and New Testament. You know, because there's Old Testament God that'll strike you down for disobeying him, and then there's New Testament God who's supposed to be loving and, you know,
why did God change? Why the change of heart, God?
I think it's more like the change in like belief than like God themselves.
Right.
That's interesting.
Meaning like the people's interpretation of God?
Yeah,
changed?
People's interpretation.
Right.
Like what they needed from their idea of God.
Like what they believed, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the idea of a savior doesn't come up really until like when the Jews were taken to Babylon.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
I mean, like it's in the last, really the only like the idea of a savior comes up like in the last prophetical book of the Old Testament, really. And I mean, you can find like possible references before that, but that's really the only real first like mention of a savior.
Do you attribute that to just like humankind just getting to this point where it's like, well, somebody's got to help us?
Well, I mean, you look at it in the elections, you know, people are like, they need someone to, you know, save them and, you know, restore their values.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Or give them hope or save them from despair. And
when really the power's within us, you know?
Ooh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and God is within us.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's where I am today.
And through us. And yeah, I mean, as far as like, you know, if you think of God like a source, it's all around us and through us, you know?
Yeah.
We kind of exist within it, you know?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So where or when do you feel like this new belief about God being this source that we all come from and existing through us, when did that belief of yours evolve or take place?
That it's been gradual, but mostly when I kind of like left like the church and started like, you know, trying to establish my own belief and like trying to like break down like the ideas like that I was taught, and just talking with people who have different beliefs and observing nature even, because like you see like, you know, things come in cycles and, you know, there's birth, death, and then like, why isn't there reincarnation instead of just going to heaven, you know?
Yeah.
You definitely come across as very studied, you know, and
I think a lot. I think for fun.
Yeah.
Do you still find yourself studying biblical text to this day, or
not so much? Honestly,
it's just still ingrained? It's just there, right on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like you grow up, you know, memorizing Bible. It kind of doesn't go away. But yeah.
Do you, so I'm wondering, do you still find yourself kind of pulling good from it? And or are you in like a stage where you're like, I can't wait to unravel all of this and not be able to reference Ecclesiastes again?
I have taken what I need from it.
Sure.
I feel like,
Yeah.
like
That's healthy.
I've taken my core tenets, and then like I've added my own beliefs to it.
Right. Do you study any other religious texts or religions in any meaningful or believing way, or?
Not so much anymore, because like, I don't know, I'm kind of suspicious of any faith really right now.
Very understandable.
Yeah, we can relate.
And like, even reading the Bible right now, it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
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 Like, it's almost traumatic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've learned about, I guess, in recent years, therapists and people working in that kind of space are having to recognize that there is a trend of a lot of people having trauma from religion, particularly Christianity. Like now there's a term like religious trauma syndrome.
Yeah. And for me, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's like when I read the Bible or think about going to church, it's like all that oppression comes back on me, and all those bad feelings come back on me.
Yeah.
And
yeah, why would you give your time and attention to something that is beating you?
Yeah, that literally abused you psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
You seem very happy as a human, and I like that. Do you feel happy?
That only has come recently, honestly.
Okay.
Like, since like I came out in December of last year, like publicly, openly to everybody.
Okay.
And for a long time, I was struggling with anger and like frustration, because I just wanted people to accept me, and I wanted people to recognize me as Olivia, you know, and as female. And like, I mean, there were a lot of people who were supportive, but the ones I really cared about at the time were the ones who weren't. Like, I was trying to prove myself to them. And that just made me like feel really bad for the longest time. But I've kind of moved past that now, and I'm like, I only have to live my life. I don't have to worry about other people.
That's big.
That is huge. Some people go their whole lives and never are able to comprehend that, because there is like a release in learning that, a release which sometimes feels counterintuitive, because it feels like you're protecting yourself by holding on to this anger that is justified. Yeah.
And like and then like the thing is, the anger I expressed, like I wasn't even really angry at people. I was angry at the system, you know?
Yeah.
And like people were defensive, like they were really angry at me for being angry. And
it's like everyone was a victim to some degree of the system.
Yeah, like they're so defensive, like of their beliefs, and like anything that, you know, diverges from that, it's like it scares them and threatens them.
Yeah, because their identity is so based on their belief system. And I bet that they're afraid that if they were to fully let themselves empathize with you or see your point of view, that it would cause a crack in their foundation, and maybe their whole lives would be turned upside down.
Yeah, break their faith.
Yeah.
which it might.
Right.
And you're like, that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
That
No, it doesn't.
That probably is a large part of why people can't fully allow themselves to accept us in our full form, because it would crack their identity.
Yeah.
And they don't want to crack their identity. Whereas I think the three of us are comfortable with breaking ourselves open and coming out of the shell.
And like poking around inside.
Yeah.
Being curious and well, why are you telling me this is the only way to be? And what if it's the opposite of that? And,
God is a mystery. I'm a mystery.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it not understanding everything.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But maybe some other people don't think they could survive without a sense of certainty. And so they have to cling to it.
They'd feel lost, because they're told that outside of church, there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's true faith, though, to be able to release that certainty is faith. You know what I mean? Like, clinging on to certainty isn't faith. It's more of a
grasping for control.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need, it's trying to feel safe, and just instead of the world is messed up, it's uncertain, but that's okay. I make my own path through it,
Yeah. And I love what you said about spending time in nature and recognizing God in nature and divinity in nature and the lessons that nature gives us. I've been thinking about that a lot this year, because sometimes you're just going through seasons where it's so tough and it feels like a season of like you're a dead tree, but then you look at the tree in the yard and you're like, oh, it's only dead for a little, it comes back, know.
It comes back
and stronger.
Yeah
Every death is equal to rebirth,
Yeah, that's beautiful. So were you surprised when you kind of stepped out of your religious environments and you took that big leap of faith and read your poetry in front of people? Were you surprised at the love that you found outside of religion when they told you it would be such a scary place?
Yeah, honestly, I was expecting to I was expecting no less than to get murdered or something,
Wow.
for coming out. And it would have not murdered, but I definitely would have been oppressed within the church, I feel like. But that's kind of what taught me to fear that. But outside, I was definitely surprised that people were accepting, oh, your name's Olivia? Okay, I'll remember that.
Yeah, there's not a desire to change who you are. It's just okay, cool. Let's go here together, Olivia.
I'll respect you.
Yeah.
Go on this journey together.
Yeah. Which is that's loving your neighbor as yourself, because nobody wants to have somebody not accept their identity and wish them to be different. That's Christ-like, is being oh, great.
Right.
I think one of the things that I keep encountering with some people from churches, if we allow this, then what's next? Dogs sleeping with cats?
Right.
Right, that's equal.
That.
Yeah, we've heard that too.
If they started doing that, what would we do? You know what I mean? What would we do?
What do you mean?
It's should we allow murder next? Or,
That's
no.
That's a false comparison.
Yeah, major false comparisons going on.
Yeah, seriously. But that's what I've experienced. And it's and I think that's just, again, the fear that, to be open and to like be like completely loving towards people.
Yeah. And a lot of time, like we were just talking about a little bit before we started this call, like with what's going on with the coronavirus. So a lot of the time it's easy to separate yourself from a situation and until it happens to you or to someone you love or is in your family. Like, I don't know if you've heard some of the stories. I've been inspired by hearing some stories of like very fundamental Christian mothers who then have a child that's transgender, and it shifts their whole faith and worldview because they're like, I thought everything was binary and I have this child who is not binary. And so I still believe that God loves my child and I love my child. So now my faith has to evolve.
Yeah, I've heard a few.
Yeah.
I've heard some more tragic ones too, but
Yeah. And it's still a mixed, obviously it's a mixed bag, and it depends on the person and how much they're able to kind of, like we said earlier, step back and open up and maybe question things.
Yeah. Some people have ability to be more open and to open up their boundaries than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You seem level-headed when you talk about things that could enrage you. You know what I mean? Like, it's more on the topic of you sounding happy and
Healthy
and almost it appears like to some degree you're really exercising your ability to forgive and have grace and have empathy, but maybe not all the time. I'm not saying you're perfect, but you said that you came to that point where you were less mad.
Yeah.
What is there a thing? Is there a tip? Can you give is there any help you can offer me or somebody listening to get to that point?
It's a process and you got to come to it at your own pace, honestly. But like, I think for me, it was understanding that these people have their own problems, and like they're coming from it, understanding their side of things. But also just being willing to like empathize with that and love them and the way you hope to be loved, Yeah. And I mean, it's so hard because, it'd be so much easier if they hated you and then you could just like completely forget about them because they're not worth it. But, when like people care about you, but they have like their own boundaries, you gotta kind of be willing to be empathetic towards that, but at the same time, live your own life, don't worry about them because what their opinion of you is not who you are.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I had a question pop in my head earlier. I was wondering if you, like, say you could go back in time and give a message to your younger self who's like in the thick of feeling so alone. Like, what would you say to her?
Oh, gosh. Oh, man. I think I'd just give them the biggest hug possible and just tell them it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that I love them no matter what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what you needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all need.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd do the same thing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Where do you find community now?
I have friends who are really accepting, and also Facebook has been like a godsend for me because I live in a conservative town. I have some people who are who I'm close to that are accepting. But I mean, they're a small group, and not many like people from the LGBTQ community are around here, you know. So
it's mainly
finding
just
them
allies.
online is great.
Yeah. Just be able to have conversations that you can't have with even your friends.
Yeah.
I'm sure is helpful.
Yeah, definitely. People who understand you, like, without like having to explain, hey, I'm transgender, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
they're like, yeah, got that.
Exist.
Let's move on.
Yeah. That's so important. And we're so fortunate that we are alive during a time when all of these communities and this technology exists.
Yeah.
You know,
Gosh, I don't know what would have happened if I had to live in a different time without that.
I know.
I probably wouldn't be here, honestly.
More pain.
Well, we're so glad you're here.
Yeah, I am too.
And we're so grateful that you reached out and that you found the show and that we were able to make a new friendship.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel very encouraged by this conversation.
Yeah. I feel very inspired by you, and you just seem like a light. Like you're just beaming, and happy to connect with you and know you. And it's an honor to, you know, be able to share your story. And I hope that you feel the same way.
I do. I mean, like, just connecting with you has been great, you know?
Yeah. And feel free to say no, but if people would like to find you and connect with you online, do you have a public profile? Are you comfortable with that?
Social media?
I really don't. I mean, I have my Facebook, Olivia Marie Wolcott, but that's about the only place that I am online.
All right.
Great. We can share that if you'd like, and if you would rather not, we can keep it to ourselves. We'll find you.
I mean, go ahead. I mean, if I can help others, that'd be great. You know?
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome, man.
Yeah.
We appreciate you so much.
Yeah. This has been a great quarantine, like little date.
Yeah,
conversation.
definitely.
Well, to anyone who's listening or watching, this has been Backsliders. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this podcast, please share it with a friend. Maybe rate, review, subscribe. It would mean a lot to us. And thank you.
No, I'm not saying that it wasn't real. I'm just saying that you made me feel bad. Don't try making me a better deal. I'm done with you and I'm fine with that, and that's that.